All right. Okay, we're back. And I'm still, like, processing how much beta-glucuronidase seems to be involved in. It's
Yeah.
like this, like, tiny enzyme is like the boss of our hormonal health, our detoxification, and even, those potential, like, big picture health concerns that you were mentioning earlier.
Right. Yeah. What's really cool is that we often just zero in on, individual symptoms or conditions, but we don't realize how connected everything really is. And beta-glucuronidase, it really shows like how interconnected everything is in the body.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So before we, go too far into those, like, bigger implications, can we circle back to Coach Dave for a minute?
That's true.
You mentioned that he sees beta-glucuronidase as a key indicator of overall gut health. So what are some of those, like, red flags he'd be looking for?
Well, he would definitely be paying attention to, those classic signs of gut distress, things like, you know, bloating that just won't go away,
Yeah.
gas, irregular bowel movements, and even, things like skin issues, brain fog. All that stuff can be a clue that, your gut's not working as well as it could be.
So those, like, seemingly minor annoyances could actually be signals of, like, a much deeper imbalance.
Exactly. And Coach Dave, he wouldn't just like slap a Band-Aid on those symptoms,
Right.
He would really dig deep to try to find out what's going on, what's the root cause.
Right. And that's where his whole removing obstacles philosophy comes in, right?
Totally. Yeah. He'd look at things like chronic stress, which can really mess with your gut microbiome,
Yeah.
which could lead to elevated beta-glucuronidase activity.
Mhm.
He would also consider things like food sensitivities and intolerances because those can trigger inflammation in the gut and, just throw off that bacterial balance.
It's wild how it all, like, comes back to the gut microbiome. So let's say someone's doing, like, all the right things. They're managing their stress, they're eating a gut-friendly diet, they're taking their probiotics. Are there any other, like, maybe less obvious factors that could still be throwing things off?
Yeah, there are a few sneaky culprits that Coach Dave would be on the lookout for. One is environmental toxins, things like pesticides, heavy metals, and even, certain chemicals in like personal care products. All that stuff can disrupt gut health, and it could impact beta-glucuronidase activity.
So even if we're doing everything right with our diet and lifestyle, these external factors could still be, like, messing with our gut.
Unfortunately, yeah. And another one that people don't always think about is medication use.
Oh, okay.
Certain medications, like antibiotics, they can just wipe out all the bacteria in your gut, good and bad, and that can create an imbalance and affect beta-glucuronidase.
It seems like we're, like, constantly fighting against things that can disrupt our gut balance. It's, like, almost overwhelming.
I know it can feel that way, but the good news is that our bodies are really resilient. By focusing on those like basic things, the diet, the stress management, and minimizing those harmful substances, we can build a more resilient gut that can handle those like inevitable challenges that come up.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot about how to, like, support healthy beta-glucuronidase activity.
Right.
But I kind of want to shift gears for a second
Oh, okay.
and talk about those potential, like, long-term health implications that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. There's new research coming out all the time about the link between, chronically elevated beta-glucuronidase levels and a higher risk of like certain diseases, including heart disease and even neurological conditions.
Okay, tell me more about that. That sounds kind of scary.
I know, but it's important to know about. Remember when we were talking about how beta-glucuronidase can lead to the reabsorption of like toxins and other stuff you don't want?
Yeah.
Well, if your body's not getting rid of those substances properly, they can just float around in your body and cause inflammation and oxidative stress.
Right, and we know that inflammation is a major player in so many chronic diseases.
Exactly. And studies are showing that high beta-glucuronidase activity is linked to a higher risk of atherosclerosis. That's the buildup of plaque in the arteries, which is like a major cause of heart disease.
Wow, so this seemingly, like, random enzyme could actually be playing a role in one of the biggest causes of death in the world.
It seems that way. The research is still pretty new, but it's pretty convincing so far. And it's not just heart disease. There's more and more research looking at beta-glucuronidase in neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Oh, wow. What's the connection there?
Well, scientists think that high beta-glucuronidase activity might contribute to a buildup of toxic protein clumps in the brain, and that's like a hallmark of those conditions.
So gut health could potentially affect brain health.
Exactly. The gut-brain connection is a really hot area of research right now, and the more we learn, the more we see how connected these two systems really are. It's becoming clear that a healthy gut is super important for a healthy brain.
This is all so fascinating, but I have to admit, it also makes me feel kind of like responsible for more stuff now.
Yeah.
Like, okay, now I have to worry about my beta-glucuronidase levels too.
It's a lot, but I think it's good to know that we have more control over our health than we often realize. And, by focusing on those basic aspects of gut health, we're not just helping our beta-glucuronidase, we're helping our whole bodies, now and in the future.
I love that perspective. It's not about like adding one more thing to our to-do list. It's about like making choices that help our bodies thrive naturally.
Exactly. And it's not about being perfect either. Life happens and we all have days where we eat things we shouldn't or we're super stressed out.
Yeah.
The key is to have those good habits in place so you can bounce back.
Okay, that makes me feel better. So we've talked about the science, the tips, and even those like bigger picture health implications. Before we move on, I'm curious, you mentioned monitoring stool quality as a way to kind of see how our gut is doing. Can you tell me more about that? Like, what should we be looking for?
Of course. Yeah, our poop can tell us a lot, actually. Ideally, you want to see a well-formed stool, kind of sausage shape that's easy to pass. If you're always having diarrhea or constipation, that's a sign that things might be out of balance.
Okay, that makes sense. Anything else?
Yeah, the color and smell can give you clues, too.
Okay.
A healthy stool should be a light to medium brown color. If it's really dark or black, that could mean you have bleeding in your digestive tract, and you should definitely see a doctor.
Got it. Okay. What of the smell?
Well, all poop has a certain aroma, but if it's super foul smelling, that could mean your body is having a hard time breaking down and getting rid of waste properly. It could point to an imbalance in the gut microbiome, which of course could affect beta-glucuronidase activity.
Wow, this has been eye-opening. It's amazing how much we can learn just by paying attention to what our bodies are telling us.
I know, it's all about tuning in and listening to those signals. And remember, everyone's different, What's normal for one person might not be normal for someone else. If you're worried about your gut, talk to your doctor or a healthcare professional.
That's great advice. Okay, I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about beta-glucuronidase, from its role in detoxification and hormone balance to its potential effects on long-term health. This little enzyme has definitely proven to be more important than it seems at first glance.
Right. It's been an amazing journey into the world of the gut microbiome, and I hope our listeners feel like they can take control of their gut health and, support this incredible system that's so important for our well-being.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay healthy. We're back for like the final part of our beta-glucuronidase deep dive. And I gotta say, I'm feeling like a weird mix of fascinated and like a little overwhelmed by it all.
Yeah, it is a lot to process, but I think at the end of the day, it's a pretty straightforward message. Like a healthy gut is the foundation for a healthy life.
Yeah, no, I can totally get on board with that. And it seems like beta-glucuronidase is a pretty big part of that, right?
Absolutely.
But before we wrap things up, I want to make sure we're connecting all the dots for our listeners.
Sure.
We've talked about the science, the like potential risks, and even some tips for like keeping this enzyme in check. But what's the big takeaway here?
Right.
Like, why should anyone listening to this even care about beta-glucuronidase?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes down to this. Beta-glucuronidase is kind of like a window into our gut health.
Okay.
And our gut health is like so closely tied to basically every aspect of our well-being.
Yeah. So it's not just like digestion and like, getting rid of waste. It's about our hormones, our immune system, how clearly we think, even our risk for like serious diseases in the future.
That's exactly it. And while beta-glucuronidase is just one piece of this whole puzzle, understanding it can help us make choices that support our overall health,
That's a really powerful message. So for someone who's like just starting to pay attention to their gut, what are some of the key things they can do to like, optimize their beta-glucuronidase activity and just like feel better overall?
I think the first step is just to really tune into what your body's telling you.
Okay.
Like, what are your gut symptoms? Are you bloated, gassy, constipated, having diarrhea? Those are all signs that something might be off.
Oh, right.
And then it's about addressing those imbalances. That's where those basic things we talked about come in, like diet, stress management, and limiting your exposure to harmful substances. We talked about fiber, resistant starches, and probiotics, all of which can help with a healthy gut microbiome. And that helps balance beta-glucuronidase activity.
Yeah, and don't forget Coach Dave's whole remove the obstacles idea. Dealing with those sneaky things like stress, food sensitivities, and environmental toxins can make a big difference, right?
For sure, it's all about making a good environment for your gut microbiome to thrive. And when your gut's happy, your whole body benefits.
This has been such an incredible journey into beta-glucuronidase. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how complex and connected our bodies are.
Right. It's amazing what's happening inside us all the time. And while it can feel overwhelming sometimes, I think it's empowering to know that we can actually make a difference in our health by the choices we make.
I completely agree. Well, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Any last words of wisdom for our listeners before we go?
Just keep learning, keep trying new things, and keep listening to your body. There's no one right way to gut health, so find what works for you and enjoy the journey.
I love that. That's great advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into beta-glucuronidase and its impact on our well-being. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay healthy.